Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and I don't even know how I'm gonna do this justice, but hey, thanks to a Patreon request from a longtime viewer, Dayton Hamilton, it's time to review the classic 1973 album The Dark Side of the Moon by the English prog rock legends Pink Floyd. Growing up, my parents had a few Pink Floyd records laying around, which is surprising to me given how uptight and religious they normally were, but one of the records I was never allowed to pick to play was also the one that had the coolest looking album cover my little eyes had ever seen. As a kid, I had this weird obsession with prisms, rainbows, and light. My dad was a science teacher, and he taught me a little bit more about the way light reflects and projects and can make all of these dazzling beams that look like they're coming down straight from heaven. So looking at that album cover always, and I mean always, made me so tempted to see and hear what the hell was hiding on that album. I didn't actually hear this album until I was maybe age 15 or 16, yet I already understood how important, or better yet classic, Dark Side was before ever hitting play. I can't lie and say I had some life-changing revelation the first time I listened to it. In fact, I found a lot of the pieces to be quite confusing, but after I turned 20, things became crystal clear one smoky evening when my friend introduced me to Reefer Madness for the first time. Judgmental glares are already flying, I can feel it. Yeah, wow, this guy smoked pot and listened to Pink Floyd and had his mind blown, big deal. Except it was a big deal, at least to me. I mean, here's this classic album I hadn't fully embraced, and also, here's my friend, the devil on my shoulder, my friend Clint, taking me to this abandoned car wash and playing Dark Side of the Moon in all of its ambitious, insane glory. Dude, my head was spinning, and even though I got paranoid as hell, I never felt more alive than I did in those moments. Suffice it to say, everyone probably has their own vivid memory of the first time they really fell in love with this album, so I'm going a bit of the non-traditional route to review Pink Floyd's 8th studio album, an art form that's still on display as it connects all of our minds to this intangible sensation that's more relevant now than ever before. It's fascinating to learn the creative process behind this classic. There's so many little details that could have made this a totally different listening experience. They played this album live a lot in the year leading up to its release, yet it never sounded the same each time they'd step on stage to perform. Tweaks were adjusted, feedback was noted, ideas were pursued, and musical revolutions were literally occurring within their own camp as this sonic warfare slowly took form, eventually becoming the masterpiece we know today. How this record affects your sensory receptors is mind-blowing in and of itself, regardless of whether or not you see this as Pink Floyd's crowning achievement or not. The YouTube channel Polyphonic did a fantastic breakdown of the entire album start to finish, from its seemingly bizarre sound effects to the very much connected thought process that rolls out throughout the album. So if you'd like to see a much deeper dive than I can provide into the record, and something that actually helped me gain more insight, I'll leave a link down below so you can check that out. Those, shall we say, abnormal sounds are all there to serve their unique purpose, to remind you of what's going on, to remind you that time's constantly passing you by and there's nothing you can do about it, to remind you of the human condition that leaves us all, at least at some times, feeling alienated. It's absolutely riveting to take it all in, and I know it sounds cliche, but turn down the lights, toss on some good headphones, let this album illuminate your head and tear down the barrier. David Gilmour is given more lead vocal duties on Dark Side than you may expect, considering Roger Waters is the name that seems to make the headlines more than any other member, but Waters doesn't even take the reins of frontman till well into the second half, commanding the two-part finale Brain Damage and Eclipse. Of course, I'm probably repeating what you already know by even saying this, but he did of course have a huge role in writing the music, even when it wasn't him on the leading vocals. The rest of the band stepped up their contributions, dialing in these mesmerizing synthesizers and calling on some outside guests to pave the road ahead. Great Gig in the Sky probably being the biggest and best example, giving Claire Torrey's absolutely iconic performance that still sends shivers down my spine. You'll notice long instrumental passages that deviate from any prog rock playbook you probably ever flipped through. The band were writing their name in the stars as they breathed life into each passing note. Speak to Me, of course, is the Manic Opener that features a collage of sounds you'll hear repeated throughout the album, notably the laughter, the ticking clock, the heartbeat, even some of those Great Gig vocals are in the mix, and just before it pushes your curiosity to the edge of insanity, Breathe hits like a refreshing wave. Distant guitars call to mind the atmosphere of another planet, calming the nerves by kind of offering this simple reminder to just breathe in the air. The tempered drums hit this sweet spot for me, as does that beautiful organ that really creeps up in the mix. You just cannot help but love that. Now earlier I mentioned the full-blown paranoia I experienced listening to Dark Side of the Moon the first time I ever got stoned. Sitting at a car wash at 1 a.m. and hearing On the Run for the first time, not actually the first time, but you know, the first time that I opened my third eye, that sent me into a time warp that I can almost still feel to this day. In fact, that whole first half finale of Run to Time to Great Gig in the Sky is still my favorite section of the record, and I think that experience may have helped shape that. I'm gonna focus on Time specifically, given that it's one of the most tragically gorgeous songs I know, a favorite that's only gonna continue hitting harder with age. From its twist of fate reprisal of Breathe, a long-winded but haunting introduction, and the obvious appeal of the lyrics, Time quite literally never stops, and I adore its foot in both worlds approach. Pink Floyd make us feel both overwhelmingly sad knowing that we can't alter or slow down time, yet it's almost, dare I say, peppy music feels so happy, and I love that. It's one of the oldest examples of a song that I can think of that has these bright-sounding musical notes, but also a very dark, brooding lyrical atmosphere. Us and Them is another gold standard cut above that I can never get enough of. Craving this track in particular feels like craving a feeling that every human being wants. They walk the line between jazz and rock with touches of pop polish that make this one go down so smooth, progressively hitting harder and harder as those angelic backing vocals surround the song and actually give Pink Floyd their wings. Money Strikes is the catchiest, most seemingly straightforward song, driven by that thudding bass line and an undying melody that rings out the anti-capitalism message. There's still so much going on in this densely layered diamond. I mean, imagine a world without that tasteful sax or even Gilmour's guitar solo. It's all just so inventive and fresh that I'd be hard-pressed to not consider this another top favorite. Finally, I want to talk about the two-part closer Brain Damage plus Eclipse. This is the point in the album where it becomes undeniable that Pink Floyd have scattered references to their former frontman Syd Barrett's mental breakdown, and at one point in time, the first half Brain Damage was originally known as Lunatic. The lyrics are nothing short of sheer brilliance as they intertwine the organs and guitars and drums. They're all breathtaking and demand to be played back to back like inseparable twins. I've really grown to cherish these as some of the album's best offerings, something that traces back all of the roads they traversed up to this point, only to just slam an exclamation point at the very end. There's no one out there that hasn't at least heard of this record, or at least have seen the album cover, and I refuse to believe otherwise. But to those of you tuning in that maybe have never experienced this album as a full body of work, it goes without saying, but change that as soon as possible. It's a 5 out of 5 classic album that's impacted millions and continues to carry the crown into this uncertain future. I was actually pretty nervous to cover this album given how much of an industry standard it is, but I hope you enjoyed my throwback review for Dark Side of the Moon. Leave a like if you did. Thanks again to my patron Dayton that made this possible. If you want to help support the channel and possibly get a request in too, then hit the link on screen or else down below to join my Patreon. I've got a whole playlist full of throwback reviews, so if you want to jump down that rabbit hole, then click this, or go here to see me talking about Pink Floyd again. Other than that, I'll be back soon with more right here on ARTV.